Hello, hello. It's me, Dr. Catherine Toomer, family medicine and community health physician, and founder of Total Weight Care Institute. And I'm also the host of the Dr. Toomer Talk Show, which you are here today. Thank you for joining me. Um, so today I'm going to do things a little bit differently. Rather than giving you a topic, I've been getting a lot of Q&As at the end of my very previous shows. So I decided just to do a Q&A now. So I'm hoping people show up and start asking me questions because otherwise it's going to be a very short show. Um, I have checked my emails and I didn't see any too many in there. I had a few, but not a lot. Um, so I'm going to pull those up if nobody says anything right now. So let me know where you are. Say hello from and let me know where you're coming in from. And if you're watching later, just put hashtag replay. Um, so if you hold on for just a moment, I'm going to pull up my messages. Hold on. Oops, pulled up the wrong one. Just a moment. Okay. All right. So, the first question I have is, um, hold on. What does it say? Um, I'll just give the first name. It's from Deborah, and she asks, um, "How do you know if it's time to be treated for a weight loss with a weight loss medication, and how do you know if that weight loss medication is safe?" Okay. Um, so first, I'm going to say, Kwana, thank you for showing up. Hello. So there are various weight loss medications, but I'm assuming that you're asking about GLP-1s. They're the safest, most effective, and they actually treat the cause of weight gain. Many of the other medications out there really just treat the symptoms. They, suppress your appetite, or but they don't actually treat the cause of weight gain. The cause of weight gain is metabolic. And like I've always said, how you gain your weight is how you need to lose it, and how you lose it is how you keep it off. And so most people who gain weight easily have difficulty losing it. It's for a metabolic reason. Even when it's hormonal, it's usually metabolic. So even if it's a thyroid problem causing a drop in metabolism, causing in hypothyroidism, then it still drops your metabolism and it makes your body very efficient at taking very little food and turning it into fat. We eat to convert food to fuel. And if we don't need that much fuel to function, like in hypothyroidism, when our metabolism drops, then our body just takes the extra and puts it into fat cells. The other thing that causes metabolic weight gain is insulin resistance. Now, insulin resistance is our body's inability to use insulin. When our body cannot use insulin properly, the cells in our body that use insulin in order to metabolize carbohydrates. Um, so when we eat carbohydrates, our body breaks it down to glucose. When glucose is in our bloodstream, our body puts out insulin in order to get our cells to absorb that glucose, so that that glucose can then be used as fuel. What happens though, if there's too much glucose in our bloodstream, some of it gets used for fuel, but the rest gets stored as fat. Or what happens is, if there's too much glucose in the blood, our body then shoots out extra insulin. And when it shoots out extra insulin, what happens is that that insulin takes the glucose plus other things if you eat it and makes fat instead of fuel out of it. It sends it to fat cells instead of sending it to our muscle for energy. And so when you're insulin resistant, high blood sugars cause high insulin levels, which actually can't be used by the cell. So what it is insulin's like a key. And when our cells are resistant, it means that the lock is rusty or there aren't enough of them. And so but there are lots of different reasons that we can get insulin resistance. Polycystic ovary syndrome creates insulin resistance. Menopause creates insulin resistance because drop in estrogen creates an increase in cortisol. That increase in cortisol then causes insulin resistance. Early, pre diabetes. You're on your way to, genetics can cause insulin resistance. Stress can cause insulin resistance just in of itself. And so when so what these medications do is they make our body not insulin resistant. They make our body use insulin properly so that glucose gets into the cells, particularly into our brain cells. Our brain uses that glucose as a signal to tell you to stop eating. It tells your body to stop making fat. It tells your body it's got enough energy so you don't have to store anymore and you can use what you're eating as fuel. So that's why diabetes medications, which are metabolic medications, work so well to help prevent weight gain and also afford weight loss. And yes, they are safe because high blood sugar, high insulin cause issues with small blood vessels. Small blood vessels are everywhere in our body. They're in our brain, they're in our eyes, they're in our fingers, our toes, our heart, our kidneys, our lungs, our liver. So when they get damaged, all organs get damaged. And so when using these medications, the GLP-1s like Saxenda, like Ozempic, Wegovy, Manjaro, Zepbound, Trulicity, when using those medications, or even Ribelsis, although not as much, which is the oral form, when using these medications, what they do is they correct the metabolic reason that weight is gained and they give you weight loss. And they also protect all organs of the body where small vessels are. And that's everywhere in our body. So, yes, they are safe. Now, before even anyone asks, I'm just going to talk about the side effects because I know that's coming next. Um, the side effects that we hear a lot about are mostly sensationalized in the press. They are rare and they definitely happen less and less than the benefits of the medication. We have been using GLP-1s now for over 20 years now. We've been using them safely in diabetics. When we started using it with um, obesity and using it as anti-obesity medication, suddenly everyone had a problem with it, which tells me it's not the medication, it's not how it's used, it's what it's used for. People are reacting to the obesity and their bias and prejudice around obesity and not the medication itself. The other thing that happened is print newspapers started dropping. And so the only way that writers for news agencies, especially the online news agencies, can get paid is by the number of clicks. Therefore, the more sensationalized the headings, the more sensationalized the article, the more clicks it got. The more clicks it got, then the more the writer gets paid or gets used repeatedly for stories because then it increases readership. And so what happens is you get these sensationalized headlines that are half truths, are true rarely, and the benefits. No one wants to hear the good stories. No one wants to hear about how GLP-1s reduce dementia, that GLP-1s reduce blood pressure, reduce inflammation, that help prevent heart attacks, that protect kidneys, that reduce fatty liver, that are mood stabilizers. They drop addiction. All these things happen with GLP-1 medications, but we don't read about those as much because it's not sexy to read about the good stuff and nobody clicks on the good stories. Um, so George asks, do you approve of use of collagen supplements following hip replacement in elderly patients? Thanks. Now, collagen. Now, when talking to, I got this question actually last time, and I asked a few people and read up on a few things. Collagen is good. I mean, it's a form of protein. Our body uses it in every single connective tissue of our body, and that includes our skin, every single space between cells that holds our cells together is by something that's a collagen derivative. Now, what orthopedists and bone specialists prefer is the costochondroitin. They said that actually helps with the joint itself. So yes, collagen's fine, but you should add the costochondroitin if it's not contraindicated, but you need to talk to your doctors about that. But that's the supplement they like to use. The other that helps is anything that helps reduce inflammation. So avoiding, simple sugars, which causes inflammation, or, reducing stress, reducing, you know, increasing blood sugar regulation in the body. All of those things help with inflammation. And so, of course, that helps with hip replacement. The other that helps with hip replacement is um, strengthening the muscles on either side of the joint. And in order to do that, it can be very difficult because often what we use are squats. Now, those can be very painful if you've had hip replacement. So often, what fitness experts and especially those, or what are called physiatrists, or people who are known, or kinesiologists, people who are known for movement and muscle, what they suggest is something like yoga or Pilates that can be very gentle, because it's one of those things that you can do a little bit or a lot depending on your fitness level, and it's very gentle on the joints. It helps with stretching, and it also helps with muscle building. And so and it helps with relaxation, which again drops cortisol, drops inflammation, drops insulin resistance. And if if you're someone who likes to do things in a community, who likes to have hobbies, then joining a Pilates studio uh, provides a community also. And so it just kind of kills many birds with one stone. So George, I hope that answers your question, and I added some extra stuff as well. um Kiana asks, what happens when you lose muscle mass and how can you build it back? The only reason people lose muscle mass is from nutritional reasons. The medication does not in and of itself, and I'm assuming, I don't know if you're asking because of GLP-1s, but I'm going to include that anyway, because that's one of the things I hear a lot about, it makes you lose muscle. What decreased appetite does, either with age or medication or stress or whatever reason, because some people eat less when they're under stress or depression or anxiety. If you don't eat enough protein, your body will go after muscle for that protein. Your organs of your body are protein organs. They need protein in order to maintain their structure. So if you don't eat enough of it, your body uses the closest source, and that's muscle. So muscle wasting, muscle loss only happens with malnutrition. If you eat enough muscle, a protein, your muscle is maintained. But if you build muscle back, yes, you can build it back, but you have to add a lot of protein to your diet so that you give your body the building blocks for that muscle. It won't just happen on its own. The other thing that is required is testosterone. Now, both men and women make testosterone. In fact, women make more testosterone than estrogen in their bodies, our bodies, believe it or not. Even though we're known, but we just don't make as much as men do. Men make much more testosterone than we do. Um, so sometimes, getting your testosterone levels checked can help, and then get it replaced if necessary. But yes, it is absolutely possible to build muscle back, but it's much, much easier to prevent losing it. Prevention is always easier than reversal. Thank you for that question. That was a good one. Demetria asked, does adopting a whole food based diet reduce inflammation? Absolutely. Um, what causes inflammation in the body is usually preservatives, simple sugars, simple grains, meaning, like flour, white flour, white sugar, white rice, those type of things. So eating a green diet, as green, as leafy, and as green as possible, helps with inflammation. And so yes, eating a whole diet. Now, you can eat carbohydrates, but you want to balance it out with everything else. The more plant based a diet, the better it is. The closer the food is to the source, the more it looks like how it comes out of the ground is the best. Once something's been processed, once something's had preservatives added to it, then all bets are off. Our body doesn't know what to do with preservatives. They're artificial. And so usually what happens, yes, it protects us from getting getting food poisoning, but it poisons us in other ways. And so one of those ways is that it causes inflammation. Another way is that our body, when not knowing what to do with something, stores it as fat until it can figure it out. And so when you eat things with a lot of preservatives, that's what happens. Your body just makes fat. And so, yes, adopting a whole food plant based diet would absolutely reduce inflammation. Now, it doesn't have to be strict, and it's not something you have to jump all the way into, but it definitely is beneficial. Absolutely. Um, Stephanie Ann asks, are compound GLP-1s effective? It depends on the source. Now, it took me 6 months to vet a compound pharmacy that I trusted. I have been using them now for 18 months, and everyone who has used them has had the exact same results as if they were using a brand medication. However, some people have who either stopped using that pharmacy, started using another, found that all their benefit went away. The reason is GLP-1, compounded GLP-1s, compounded medications in general are not regulated by the FDA. So therefore, there's no way of knowing if what you're getting is what they say it is. Often what many pharmacies will do is add vitamins to it in order to get around the FDA, because then it becomes a supplement and the FDA doesn't have regulation over supplements. But the problem is they might make you feel better because it's a vitamin you need. You might need B12, you might need vitamin D, you might need, vitamin C, and they might add those things to it and it makes you feel good, but it's not doing what you want it to do. And so, yes, their compounds are extremely effective when they are made properly, and that is the key. Not all are created equally, and you just have to make sure you find one that's reputable. Find a doctor who uses a reputable pharmacy. One of the ways that I always say that you can watch out for compounded GLP-1s, if someone makes it and sells it, then I would be very careful. There are many pharmacies who only distribute the medication. They don't make it themselves, which means that they have a vested interest in making sure that you get a good product so that you keep coming back. Someone who makes it and sells it, their profit margin goes up when they give you a subpar product because it's cheaper to make. And so if they could just keep selling for the first time to people, then it's their incentive to water down or dilute the product is just too tempting because the profit margins are just way too high. What is a good A1C number? It really depends on the person. So anything under 5.6, 5.6 or below is considered normal. Anything from 5.7 to 6.5, 6.4 is pre-diabetes. Anything over 6.5 or above is diabetes. Now, an A1, that's good for A1C if you're looking for diabetes and pre-diabetes. The A1C doesn't tell you anything if you're looking for insulin resistance. You can still have insulin resistance and a normal A1C. In fact, a normal A1C, you can have an A1C that's really, really low because insulin levels keep shooting up and driving it down, blood sugars down, and so a good A1C is anything below 5.6. But if you're still having issues with cravings, especially carbohydrates, if you notice you have a dark ring around your neck, if you start noticing that you're sleepy after eating, if you start noticing that you're irritable, food makes changes your moods one way or the other, then there's a good chance that your body has glucose dysregulation, and you can have a normal A1C but still have glucose dysregulation and still gain weight very easily in that phase. And the way to check for that is with a glucose tolerance test. What I do is a non-fasting glucose tolerance test, and what that means is you check blood sugar and A1C, then you challenge the body with blood sugar, and then check it again an hour later and see what happens with insulin and see what happens with blood sugar. And that will tell you if there's insulin resistance, even with a normal A1C. Um, Charles says, great question and awesome response as well from the doctor. Ah, thank you. Um, Stephanie asks, I'm asking because I'm not losing weight. What about your program? How much is your program? Okay, well, I have various programs and it really just depends. The best thing to do is to really just go to my website, drtoomer.com. That's drtoomer.com. I'll put it in the chat in just a moment. And make an appointment, make a patient appointment so that I can talk to you, because there may be a way. My ultimate goal is to get people with their own primary care doctors who know them best. But but even in my consultations, what I'll do is do an assessment and give you an idea of what's going on so you can decide what to do next. So yeah, I'm just going to put um, my website in there. And if you go under contact, there's a way for you to make an appointment with me for a consultation. Okay, I'm just going to go up. The questions are coming fast, so I'm losing some. Let me go back up. Okay. So Shelly asked, I have a question. Had my gallbladder removed last year and still have diarrhea eating fried food. Yeah, that's going to happen. And the reason is you've got nothing to stop help your body absorb fat when your gallbladder's out. So you've got to be really, really careful when eating fatty foods once your gallbladder's gone. But the good thing is, without your gallbladder, that means you can't make gallstones either as easily, and therefore it protects your pancreas. So yeah, when you got your gallbladder, for those who are listening who who aren't sure what gallbladder does, what our gallbladder does, it makes bile, and what bile does, it helps break down it helps take fat that we've eaten and breaks it down into small enough little packets so that it can get absorbed in our intestines, so that then our body can then the use the fat to make hormones. Usually is what, or use it for hormones. Fat is used for nerves. It's used for various organs of the body. Our brain is very fatty as well. And then the extra is, of course, stored as fat for fuel for later. But without a gallbladder, it's really important to eat, simple unsaturated fat so that your body can absorb it, so that um, you can get fat in order to make the body structures that you need. But yeah, if you eat too much, you will still have diarrhea. But I would recommend talking to a gastroenterologist or a colorectal surgeon. They are the ones who are best equipped to answer your questions about how to prevent that from happening. So Stephanie says, I'm asking because not losing weight. Okay, so you're on tirzepatide. Generally speaking, when I find someone is on a GLP-1 and it's not working, there's a couple of things happening. Either their weight is not being caused by a metabolic process, and so a metabolic medication is not treating anything. The other is it's only partially treating, and there's not enough being done in the other pillars of weight loss. You still need to build muscle. You still need to work on metabolism. Still need to, watch protein intake and sugar intake and simple carb intake. And so those things have to be maximized. The other is if stress is an issue, stress creates cortisol. Cortisol is one of the rare things that will completely override the medication if it's too high. So one of the pillars of weight loss I see overlooked the most is not getting enough sleep and not doing something to de-stress every single day. Without de-stressing, most processes are going to be overridden by a more powerful process, and that's cortisol. So if you're on tirzepatide and um, your muscle mass is too low, you're not eating enough calories, you're not getting enough sleep, you're not drinking enough water, and your stress levels are high, no amount of medication is going to work. That's just the reality of it. Um, can I recommend a compounding pharmacy? Most compounding pharmacies can't be recommended because you cannot get the medication from them. It has to be through a doctor. So, what I would recommend again is go to my website, make an appointment with me for consultation. And there's a couple of things I'd ask about what state you're in, um, because I have doctors that I also use the same pharmacy I do that I can send you to if it's not a state that I can practice in. Which I have license in Michigan, South Carolina, and Georgia, Texas soon. So if you're in any of those states, I can help. If not, I have other doctors I can send you to. Chris, as you know, we can't get our meds any longer in Virginia from RX Harmony in Georgia. So what should I do to ask pharmacist or my primary doctor send this to us? Well, it so happens, Chris, I have a doctor in Virginia for you. So send me a message after this. I actually have um, I have a doctor who can get it for you. So you're good. So this is something I haven't announced. I'm going to announce it now. So those of you who are listening, so many of you have been patients of mine who I was helping get. Um, I was helping to get compounded medications. When the regulations changed, it made it hard for me to help people in states where I didn't have a license. Now, what I've done is I'm pulling doctors together from all over the country so that I have a doctor for referral to every single person who contacts me asking for help. So, whatever state you're in, if you need a compound pharmacy, I actually now have doctors who can help with that. It hasn't been completely officially announced. I haven't launched the website, but within the next couple of weeks, we will have doctors. I already have some in place already. So depending on what state you're in, I can help. Others may, I'm just kind of getting them onboarded so that they can help. So it may take a minute. But yeah, Chris, I found someone. So yeah, you just contact me and I'll get, or I'll just send it to you. I'll remember to send it to you. Um, do I provide telehealth services? Yes, I'm 100% virtual. And that is all I do is telehealth. So I help anybody anywhere that I'm licensed. And then I have other doctors that I can refer you to if I'm in a state that, if you're in a state where I can't treat. Sherry says, good evening from Brooklyn. Thank you for coming. Oh, thank you, Renee, for adding my website. I threw that in there. Thank you for the assistance. I appreciate it. Chris says, how long will it take for us to know the new compounding meds are working or not working? Thanks, Chris. So if you don't have to change from one you already know that's working, then good. If you within a couple, usually, okay, so this is what, if you're on a new compound medication, or if you're on any medication, if you remember what symptoms you were having before you started, like were you having food noise, were you having lots of cravings, were you gaining weight uncontrollably, were you tired all the time, were you irritable all the time? If any of those symptoms are there and you're on a new medication and those symptoms come back, that means that medication is just simply not working. So usually people will start to notice in about 2 weeks um, whether something's working or not. And then, but definitely within about 4 weeks, you'll know. Lily asked, what if a person was told a month ago that they have pulmonary hypertension? Doctor actually said they have pulmonary hypertension with a number 35. However, now the number is 42. Person is trying to keep blood pressure normal, also taking Turin to help the heart. Feels tired all the time. However, started on Prolia 3 weeks ago, and also causes tiredness and weakness. This is something that you really need to be followed very, very closely by a cardiologist. Now, one of the things my cardiologist did was was use GLP-1s as a way of protecting my heart. And there are lots of different ways of dropping blood pressure. However, hypertension is one of those things you just don't play around with. If you have treatment, take it um, until you can do other things that will help, like any other lifestyle changes, things that might help, dropping salt, doing dropping cortisol, um, getting a nice relaxation program, daily program, because um, blood pressure. The reason correcting blood pressure is just so important is because it damages blood vessels so drastically. Every moment that your blood pressure is high, it is stripping the inside of whatever blood vessels where that high pressure is in existence. So if you think of it like pressure washing a house, when you pressure, if you take water in under pressure, it can strip paint off of brick. It strips dirt. It just strips whatever it hits. Well, our blood is fluid. And when we say blood pressure, it has basically become a pressure washer. And that pressure is stripping the inside of our blood vessels, which makes them first hard and then weak, and they burst. That's how strokes happen. That's how aneurysms happen. That's how aortic aneurysm dissections happen. So, getting blood pressure under control is really, as quickly as possible, is very, very, very important. And so, my recommendation is follow whatever your doctors recommend to get that done. Um, can I recommend food to help with sleep? Not foods to help with sleep. However, I can recommend a doctor who can maybe. I do have someone that I go to whenever I have a question about sleep or having difficulty sleeping. Um, her name is Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown. She's a sleep specialist. Um, I know one of the things I recommend as far as sleep is concerned is, one, not to eat foods too late because reflux can also cause issues with sleep. Um, Not to eat any acidic foods before going to sleep because, again, reflux and cause some issues. Usually, proteins are a better food to eat than anything else because protein is slow to digest. And so, what happens is your body doesn't have these drops in blood sugars. You don't get hungry in the middle of the night. And so, um, it's always good not to go to bed hungry, but also not to eat too late, close to the time you go to sleep, because your sleep will be disrupted. The other thing that disrupts sleep is alcohol. The other sleep that disrupts sleep is exercise too close to bedtime. So it's easier to avoid things that disrupt sleep than it is to do things that help sleep. Now, one of the things that helps with sleep is not so much a food, but a supplement. Some sleep specialists recommend magnesium glycinate as a form of magnesium that helps people sleep. Melatonin is another. Ashwagandha is another, depending on your cause of why you're having difficulty sleeping. The best way to prevent anything is to find the cause of why it's happening and go after it. So if it's mood related, fix the mood. If it's um, inactivity related, fix the inactivity. If it's stress related, fix the stress. That's how you get better sleep. If it's hormonal related, particularly if you're near heading towards menopause, hormone replacement, progesterone especially will help with the sleep. It will help with also with preventing night sweats. If your sleeping is being disrupted by temperature changes, then get the bedroom to a temperature that is helpful. If your sleep's being disrupted because you're too stimulated before you eat from television or electronics, then get rid of them at least hour to 2 hours before sleep. So again, sleep disruption has a cause. Go after the cause. The sleep in and of itself is a symptom. Go after the cause of why that symptom is being affected. Chris asks, I just started a new one tonight, but tried to get it back through Georgia. I'll wait for your email. Thanks so much. You're welcome. Now I can tell you, Chris, you know my memory's bad, so please remind me, contact me, and let me know to remind me, because I say I'll remember, and then I may or may not. I get distracted. I get busy. Some other things start happening. I've got a lot going on, so just please make sure you remind me if you don't hear from me in the next couple of days. Um, Norma asks, I just tuned in. What is considered a high blood pressure now? Okay. So generally, high blood pressure is anything over 190, 90 over, sorry, 140 over 90. We'd like to see it around 185 over 85. Now, depending on your health parameters, like if someone has kidney disease, for example, we sometimes like it to be a little bit higher just so that we can make sure the kidneys are being perfused. For some people, they may need to be a little bit lower because if they have, chest pain related to slightly higher blood pressure. But that's something you talk to with your doctor specifically for you. But when it comes to just general high blood pressures, anything one over 140 and over 90 and over. You're welcome, Lily. Okay. Dawn asked to please put the name of I will. Okay. So I'm putting the sleep specialist name. Her name is Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown. And her business, I mean her practice is I think it's Restful Sleep MD. Don't quote me on that. But I got her name right. I may not have gotten the name of her practice right. And that's the sleep specialist. Okay. Shauna says, I came in at the tail end of about aortic aneurysm. So when I was talking about aortic aneurysm, I'm talking about blood pressure. And so when you have high blood pressure, what happens is that it strips the inside of your blood vessels and it makes them weak. And so what happens is you get aneurysms. And then when those aneurysms happen in your aorta, they dissect and it bursts. And it's almost sudden death. If it happens in your brain, it causes a stroke. If it happens in your kidneys, you can lose your kidney function. If it happens in your intestine, you can lose parts of your intestines or around your intestine. And you can lose it, and it causes surgery, and you have to get it removed. So basically, our blood supply keeps our body alive. There are very few parts of our body that do not need blood supply. We don't have blood vessels in our nails. We don't have blood vessels in our hair, but everywhere else we've got blood vessels. So when they get damaged, it damages some part of your body. And high blood pressure is one of those things that causes damage. High blood sugar is another thing that causes damage. And so anything that also causes blood pressure to go up, like stress, cortisol. So anything that affects your cortisol, anything that affects your stress levels, anything that affects your blood pressure, all those things need to be addressed. Cholesterol is another. If you have high cholesterol and it gets deposited in different places in those vessels, same thing can happen. Dehydration can also cause problems with blood vessels because it can cause blood clots. And then the smaller the vessel, the more those clots can then get lodged and cause problems. In the lungs, it can cause sudden death. So yeah, it's blood pressure is a really important thing to get under control. Demetrius says, I've eaten broccoli sprouts and they have made me sleepy. Are they like a natural melatonin? It very well might be. I don't know. You can look it up and tell us. But then again, like I said, if it's a natural food and it makes you sleepy, and sometimes, that's it's not a bad thing necessarily, you know. Um, but broccoli sprouts are very nutritious. And often, though, what makes you sleepy, if it is sleepy when it's not at a time you normally, so there's two things that happen also. When you've eaten, your blood also shifts. Your oxygen level, your oxygen goes to your digestive system to make you help digest food. Sometimes when that shift happens, it does make you sleepy. But the other thing is what you eat it with can also make you sleepy. So if you're eating it with some type of grain, you're eating it with some type of carbohydrate, sometimes it's your body's reaction to that carbohydrate. The other is hydration can also do that. So if you're eating and you need fluid and you're not getting enough fluid, it will also make you sleepy. But it could be a natural melatonin. That's a good question. I'm going to look it up. And I won't look it up right this second because I'm talking, but Yeah, good a good diet, it doesn't all is depending on when you eat it in the daytime, the time of day can have different effects. So I'm gonna look that up because that's it could be also that foods that are high in magnesium can also make you sleepy, but for a good reason, not a bad one. So let's see here. I'm trying to pull it. Shonda said, I just had one 10 months ago, ascending. Oh, wow. Um, I hope you're okay. When you say had one, you're talking about aortic aneurysm. Um, I hope it was caught. Obviously, it was caught early enough because you're still here to tell us about it. But I'm sure that your doctors have been very informative about how to keep your blood pressure down because that's really blood pressure. High blood pressure is not your friend. Keeping it down will be. So, are there any other questions coming in? Let me just see if there's any that have come in through my email. Okay. So I have one here from Sarah that asks, why does menopause cause weight gain? Oh boy, that is a subject in and of itself. I'm going to try to do this quickly. So the reason we gain weight with menopause, especially it's normally weight gain around the middle, is because it is caused by a drop in estrogen. That estrogen then leaves cortisol unopposed. Unopposed cortisol causes insulin resistance, and insulin resistance causes fat production. So, drop in estrogen, rise in cortisol, rise in insulin resistance, increase in fat production, particularly in the metabolic region, which is basically through our middle. So that's why when we're under stress, when we're menopausal, we get weight gain through the middle. The other thing that happens is our testosterone also drops during menopause. Men- Testosterone helps us with muscle maintenance. It also helps us with our metabolism. So when you build muscle, your metabolism, so you burn off more calories just from minute to minute. And so when you eat food, your body's more likely to send it to your muscles for fuel rather than send it to fat cells to make fat. And so, but when our testosterone level starts dropping, we start losing that muscle mass. And so, therefore, we start losing that ability. So that's why it's really important if you're in your mid 30s, not I mean if you're in your mid 30s or older, but definitely younger, but the muscle, and I'm going to say this very clearly, the muscle you build now will determine your independence later. The main reason that people are not independent when they're in their 80s or 90s or when they're in wheelchairs, they're bedbound, is because they don't have enough muscle to maintain their balance or to maintain their mobility or to maintain their daily activities of living. If you're strong enough now, you're mobile enough now, and you're capable enough now, build that muscle now so that you have independence later. Your quality of life later will depend on how much muscle you build now. And that also includes making sure your hormonal levels are where they should be. So if you start dropping estrogen and progesterone, you need them. If your testosterone starts dropping, you need to replace it so that you can maintain and build your muscles so that your quality of life is better when you're older. Um, Dawn says, thanks so much. This was so helpful. Please have another one just on menopause. I absolutely will. Um, I will. And in fact, I'm probably going to end up inviting a doctor that I really look up to and I get a lot of information from, mainly because with menopause, our quality of life as women is so heavily affected by menopause. It affects our sleep, it affects our moods. It affects our brain function. It affects our sexual activity and enjoyment. It affects our body's ability to keep us, it affects our metabolism and our fat production. Even if you're not overweight and you gain 5% of your body weight above, that affects your health negatively. Negatively. So even if your weight starts going up and you're not overweight, it is important to get it addressed. It is a metabolic weight gain, and you can find metabolic ways of dropping that weight again. Muscle is the most natural way, but GLP-1s help also. But not all doctors agree with I but then I'm one of those doctors that use GLP-1s off label way before everybody else did. So for over 10 years now. Now we have 600. We all know it helps with weight loss. But there was a time, believe it or not, that people didn't know that GLP-1s could help with weight loss. Those of us who did know and were using it were telling everybody, and then of course the pharmaceutical companies started to listen. But yes, with menopause, it's so important to understand it and to treat it and to address it early, because it does cause a lot of health problems when left unattended. And it does. I mean, menopause is caused by our estrogen dropping. We as women are estrogen driven animals. So when we lose our estrogen, we essentially lose part of our life, and it shortens our life actually. So yeah, I will do another on estrogen. I mean on menopause specifically. Sherry said, "Thank you for your willingness to share this valuable information." It's I don't consider it a willingness. I consider it an obligation. The reason is I went through many, many years of education, many, many years of medical school to get this information, and it is information that saves lives. To keep it to myself, I feel is selfish. So, thank you for saying that, but really, I feel like it's my duty to do this. Deborah asked, "What supplements are good for bone density?" Thank you. Vitamin D and calcium, primarily. Costochondroitin and collagen are good for joints, the actual lining of the joints. Um, but for bones specifically, our body uses parathyroid hormone, which is a little hormone, a little organ right off our thyroid right here. And what it does, it helps regulate bone production. And vitamin D and calcium are what our body uses for bone. And that's why when our vitamin D levels are low, our bones ache. We get really achy. The other thing, as an aside, vitamin D helps with mood stabilization as well. So if you're someone who has depression or anxiety, you should make sure your vitamin D levels are normal, which most of us are not because we don't spend enough time in the sun to get our vitamin D levels where they should be. Thank you for fulfilling your duty and obligation. Oh, you're welcome. Um, any more questions? I'm surprised I didn't get, well, I'm glad you all showed up and asked me questions because I really didn't get very many in my emails, but I will be doing this. So this is what I'd like you to do for all of those who are listening right now. Send me questions to, and I'm going to write the address, help at drtoomer.com. My assistant will gather the questions, keep them in a folder for me. So when it comes time for me to do this again, I will have those questions all together and I will talk about them. The other thing that you could do is you can ask me questions directly instead of waiting in my group, which is https slash facebook.com/groups/total weight loss. Just making sure I have it correct. There we go. So you can also join my group and ask me questions there. What that gives me the opportunity to not only answer your question, but to help educate anyone else who's reading it. Okay. Okay. Um, Kimberly asks, I'm joining late, but wondering, do we need to visit a geriatric doctor past a certain age? It really just depends on your health status. That's a question for your family medicine physician or internal, and your primary care doctor. Um, if you have lots of health, age-related health issues, then yes, a geriatrician may help. A really good primary care doctor should be able to help you, though. regardless of your age. Um, something I'm not a big I let me just put it this way. I am a huge proponent of treating the person, not their age. You treat the person, not their numbers. So if you're young, regardless of what your birth date is. And if you have issues that need to be addressed, they need to be addressed regardless of what your birth date is. So if you're a 60-year-old who has, advanced disease, you need to be addressed. If you're a 90-year-old who doesn't have advanced disease, then you don't have to treat something that's not there. Um, my mother's 94 years old, still very active, and so I'm very grateful that her doctors treat her based on who she is, not based on the fact that she's 94. Otherwise, we probably would have lost her because there are a lot of things that wouldn't have been done had people been said, "Oh, you're 90, why bother?" They bothered, and she's still here, and we still enjoy talking to her often. Um, so Denise asked, "Am I licensed in Pennsylvania?" No. Do you have an opinion on Red Rock Pharmacy? I do not know what that pharmacy is. I'm not in Pennsylvania. I do have a doctor for Pennsylvania, however. I use the brand Zepbound and Compound, um, and I can definitely say that the brand is stronger. Okay, so what that means is the compound you're using isn't appropriate, isn't a good one. You shouldn't be able to tell the difference. A good compound and the brand should not be any different. So whichever compound you're using, stop. And don't use them together for sure. The other is there are discounted brand pharmacies, which I have as well. Um, and so that's another option. But it costs a little more because it is brand. But so let me just put it this way. Anyone who's interested in finding out more about compounded medications, just go to my website, send me a message, make an appointment to see me. Now, they are true consultations. I actually gather information. I actually create a real doctor's appointment. So therefore, they are paid appointments, but you walk away knowing exactly what to do and exactly what's going on. It's not just me gathering information and saying, "Oh, that's nice," and then sending you on your way. And then from there, I can say what the options are. And one of those options can be take this information back to your primary care doctor. That's also an option. These are the tests you may need. These are the medications that may work for you. These are your options and how to get those medications. And then you can go from there and decide what you want to do next. Okay. What's my website? Okay. I'm going to write it again. It's drtoomer.com. And it's under the contact. And just make sure that you click the tab for patients. If you click the tab for doctors, what's going to happen is you'll get the wrong kind of appointment and you may not get what you need because the appointments for patients are longer, the different type of appointment. Dorothy, good evening. Dr. Jones, good evening, Dorothy. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so Deborah says, I don't eat red meat. My blood work is indicated I'm anemic. Is that the cause? Yeah, probably. However, it's not the end of the world. The reason is red meat is very high in vitamin B12 and iron. Both of those things help to prevent anemia. However, talk to your doctor about possibly taking a prenatal vitamin. Prenatal vitamins, I find, are one of the best multivitamins to take because it has everything you need plus iron. I mean, when you think about it, it's all the nutrients you need to grow another human. So they're often really, really, really well as in our human, in the adult human. So, but ask your doctor because it's easily fixed. Anemia is not something you have to live with. However, if you live with anemia for too long, it strains your heart. And when you think that anemia means your red blood cells are low, your red or the components of your red blood cells that carry oxygen is low. When our body parts don't get oxygen, they die. So being anemic is not a benign thing. It should be corrected. It should be fixed. And Prenatal vitamins are a good thing if you can take them. So ask your doctor if they're okay for you, and make sure whatever your doctor suggests that you do in order to correct your anemia. So when someone says, "Oh yeah, I checked your labs and you're a bit anemic," don't let it stay there. You have to do something about it. Tell them, ask your doctor, well, what are we going to do about it? Oh, and if they say, "Oh, we're just going to watch it," oh, no, because what you watch is you deteriorate, and that's not a good thing. So anemia is serious. It may not kill you today, but it's definitely detrimental to your health, and so you want to make sure it's corrected. As someone who has been anemic and not anemic, I can tell you, yes, it is very important to um, keep anemia at bay. Any other questions? Okay. I've been going to my primary doc. My age is 50. I have a suggestion. Do need to find another doctor. I couldn't tell you that. Um, that's something I would never tell somebody they have to find a new doctor. I would say, make sure that this is what I would say. When you go to your doctor, you should feel like you're being cared for. When you go to your doctor, you should feel like you're being taken seriously. When you go to your doctor, you should be feeling like you're a person and not a number. When you go to your doctor, you should feel like your questions are answered. Make sure you write them down. Anyone who hasn't looked, now I did a video a couple weeks ago on PPQRST. What that is, it is a way for you before going to your doctor's appointments to write down the things that will help your doctor make decisions. It will help your what we are essentially are problem solvers. We're puzzle pieces. We're puzzle solvers. The more information we have, the easier it is for us to solve that puzzle. But that information comes from you. So the better historian you are, the better you give information, the better we are at fixing whatever's going on. So if you go to my YouTube channel and look under, and it says, help your doctor with PPQRST, listen to that. What that is, it's a list of questions that you can answer before going to your doctor. So that way your doctor has a better idea of what's happening. If you feel like you're being listened, and then from there, you can go from there. But there's nothing wrong with getting a second opinion. There's nothing wrong with finding a new doctor, but just know when you change doctors, the doctors often start all over again. We follow certain regimens, we ask certain questions, and unless we have those answers that we're comfortable with, we won't move on to the next step. So when you go to a new doctor, often what they'll do is they'll start at the first step again, because they want their own answers to their own questions. So often, sometimes staying with the same doctor and being able to progress a little bit farther down the process is better. Shauna says, do you recommend the GLP-1 injection? I'm a GLP-1 expert. I am a huge proponent of GLP-1s. I've been on a GLP-1 myself for over 10 years. I've been prescribing them for over 10 years. I have watched people have miraculous recoveries of all different types of ailments on GLP-1s. I can count on one hand the number of complications I've had. Most of those were related to the underlying disease of diabetes, more so than the medication itself. GLP-1s have been a game changer and a lifesaver. And the only thing that's sad is that it's been tarnished by diet culture. It's been tarnished by bias and prejudice of obesity that have been superimposed on the medicine. And so we're just getting a lot of misinformation, a lot of sensationalized information that is just simply not true, or it's half true. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people being scared away from a medicine that could save their lives. How do I get my doctor to give me bioidentical estrogen? I'm 50 and feel like I'm losing my mind. Okay. Just so you know, all estrogen medication is bioidentical. All bioidentical means is that it is identical to the biological hormone that your body produces. So no matter where you get your estrogen, even if it's brand estrogen, it is bioidentical. That's Bioidentical has estrogen is a marketing term that has made um, marketing being what it is a why my camera's getting all wonky. So by marketing, you have to understand that often with marketing, we it pokes at our insecurities and it pokes at our fears and it pokes at things that make us think that what we're getting is not good enough. And so one of the things that marketing has done is made us think that brand estrogen is somehow dangerous, is somehow not good, and bioidentical, which means compounded estrogen, which again means you have no idea what's really in it, estrogen. So best thing to do is to go with the medicine we already know works, that the FDA has proven works. The FDA had tested. When you go with a compounded medication, you really don't know what you're getting, honestly, and it has to be vetted in a way that most people don't aren't capable of vetting. And I can understand as someone who's 59, yes, I get it. Just go to your doctor, go to your gynecologist, go. There's also another doctor you should follow. If you have any questions about menopause, even though she's not a gynecologist, she's a urologist, but her name is Dr. Rachel Rubin. I'm putting it in the chat. She is on Instagram and on YouTube. Wonderful videos. If you ever want to know anything that, um, if you ever want to know anything about menopause and how to treat it, go listen to her videos. Dorothy asked, "What is a GLP-1? It's a GLP-1. It's okay. Okay, so GLP-1s are glucagon-like polypeptides. What that means is glucagon like peptides are basically, it's a substance that actually is produced naturally in our body, and what it does, it helps regulate our blood sugar so that those of us who have glucose dysregulation stop gaining weight and helps us lose weight. Most people who are overweight and obese have insulin resistance, have some type of glucose dysregulation. And that's why these medicines work so well to help with weight loss. They don't just help in thin air, they're actually treating something. They're treating the biological metabolic reason that our body gains weight. It reverses it. And that's what they do. Yeah, I know. I thought it meant it was synthetic, if not bioidentical. And that's, unfortunately, that was a marketing ploy. Um, you're not the only person, Sugar, who thought that. It was done on purpose. It was done to make you think that on purpose. Um, so don't beat yourself up for that. Um, but just so you know, all hormones that are you take are synthetic. Unless you're taking it straight out of an ovary of a cow, it's synthetic. I would like to speak to you offline about the jig. Okay, what you should do is go to my website, drtoomer.com, and make a consultation appointment. That's the best way, so that I can talk to you specifically about whatever issues that are yours specifically and individually. Marsha said, I'm so late, Dr. You can listen to the replay, Marsha. Gave a lot of information. Oh wow, we've been gone over an hour. This is the longest I've ever done. Kimberly said, I haven't had an estrogen level check. Is that something done through blood tests? Okay, I can tell you this. Estrogen, yes, you can check estrogen. It doesn't tell you a whole lot more than what you can. A good history and a physical will tell any doctor, any good doctor, more about your estrogen levels than any blood test will. If you're over a certain age, your estrogen is dropping. It's just a biologic fact. If your periods are irregular after a certain age, your estrogen is down. It's a biologic fact. If you're not having periods at all, you have your estrogen levels low. That's a biologic fact. You don't need to check your levels to know this. Your body, you have symptoms that are already going to tell you if you're where your estrogen levels are. And most blood tests aren't going to tell you because they fluctuate from time of the month. They fluctuate during the day. So just getting a blood test isn't going to tell you much if they're normal. It will tell you something if it's zero, but then your no periods will tell you it's zero already. So a good history is all you need. Doris said, what if you take a probiotic? Probiotics are good. I'm not really well proficient on how to know what's a good probiotic. Basically, the rule of thumb is if it's more than 40 million, I guess it's bacteria per pill, and really good ones and the ones that are done properly are refrigerated. But again, that's only I have no proof of that. I can't tell you any studies about that. I just know that that was the rule of thumb that I've always used. However, that formulations change, medications improve, even supplements improve. So there could be some really good probiotics out there. Gastroenterologist would be the person to ask. Colorectal surgeons would be the people to ask. They're the ones who actually deal with the gut. And so, and when I talk about gut health, please talk to an expert, not someone who says they're an expert, not someone who thinks they're an expert, someone who's actually studied expert, which means a gastroenterologist, because anyone else is not been as educated. I followed Suzanne Summers, and that's where I got the term bioidentical. Exactly. And guess what Diane Summers is? She's an actress, not a doctor. She's not a scientist. And she usually is selling it for someone or for some company. And I know, and it's hard because everyone has an agenda, and it's really difficult. But my thing is this: hormones are is a scientific thing. It is part of the human body. Go to experts on the human body if you want to know what should happen. Oh, you're welcome for being here. Sonia asked, why do you have hot flashes? Okay, so what hot flashes are is a small vessel issue. It's like it's part of like it's how your body cools you down. There are central mechanisms in our brain that help regulate our temperature, that tells our body, it tells the brain, your body's overheated, cool it down now. And so when you're exercising, it's a natural reaction because your blood vessels open up and you start to sweat. Hot flashes are a misfiring of that mechanism. Estrogen helps regulate that in our brain. And so when our estrogen levels drop, that mechanism gets out of whack. And so our brain gets the wrong message and we start trying to cool off in a situation where we don't need to. So that's why they happen. That's the simplest way of explaining it. I mean, there's a more scientific way, but that's basically, and that's why taking progesterone and estrogen combined now are usually the things that stop hot flashes, because it just gives your brain back the hormone that it needs to know that everything's regulated and where it should be. Shah asks, I take losartan. Will it cause restless leg at night? Usually, not usually. Restless leg usually has to do with calcium. Losartan deals with potassium. But that's something you should talk to your doctor about. Often dehydration, low calcium are the things that cause restless leg syndrome. It can also be psychological. Stress, anxiety, depression can do it as well. Some medications can also cause it. So if you're having restless leg issues, talk to your doctor. It's a medical condition that can be treated. What's a good omega-3? I can't tell you a brand, but I can tell you that taking it is good. Cordelia, if that makes sense. It really does help with nerves and heart and a bunch of other things, but I don't know brands well because I don't sell. So I don't know. I don't really keep up on which brands are good. I do have access to different supplements, but usually I find that Nature's Made and Nature's Bounty over the counter are often some of the best. I mean, that's what I take when I need a supplement. I don't buy fancy supplements. I just go to Nature's Bounty, Nature's Made at CVS. Is there anything that helps with hot flashes? I feel like I'm in the oven all the time. Yes, hormone replacement. Talk to your doctor about hormone replacement. I would also, like I said, listen to Dr. Rachel Rubin on Instagram and YouTube. She has a lot of information on how to help with that. And so it's information you can take to your doctor. Okay. Well, this has been great. I don't want to keep you any longer. I actually have other obligations at 7:30, but that's okay. I will do this again. So, if to please, if you have questions, join my group that I gave you and then ask the questions there or email them to me so that I can put them in a folder. So when I do this again, I have some questions and then you can, and I'll also let you know in advance. And then, but that's the best two ways of getting your questions answered at any time. You can also follow me on YouTube. I do check the comments. So if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, I will, you can, send me messages there and I'll get them and answer them as best I can. If it's something that requires a longer explanation, I'll just do a video on it. So I do videos even outside of my Tuesday evenings. So and as you can tell, I like to teach. I feel it's like my obligation. It's my responsibility and my duty to do that. So if you have questions, I don't mind answering them. I really don't. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. And I will see you next Tuesday at Dr. Toomer Talk Show.